Today on Smackey's Garage, we're going to be taking apart this 800 SkiDoo engine and we're going to figure out what exactly went wrong with it. Now, if you're following along with this build series, I have a SkiDoo Renegade. It's 2007 and the engine, just one of the cylinders stopped firing. I was almost completely back to the truck and of an 80-mile ride. For the last 1 or 2 miles, just one of the cylinders just completely stopped. Now in the last video, I ended up spending a lot of time taking the engine out of the snowmobile, and now we have the engine out and we're gonna be taking it apart to see what exactly went wrong. If you wanna check out that last video on taking the snowmobile apart, getting the engine out, go ahead and do that. Now let's talk a little bit about what I've noticed. So this engine here, I believe is a 2007. Don't know if it's actually original to the sled. I do know that the previous owner overheated it and it ended up having to be replaced, or they did a top end on it. So we're gonna take a look, see what went wrong with it this time. There's a hypothesis that one of the carburetors fell out of the car boots, didn't give any gas to it, and now one of the cylinders, this one specifically, is low on compression. So we're gonna check that cylinder out and take a look to see if we can notice anything before we take it apart. Then we're gonna fully take it apart. So let's go ahead, let's look at the engine before we take it apart. Then we'll go ahead and start taking the head off. Now, looking through the intake, one of the first things that you notice is there is a good amount of scoring on the pistons, but what really stands out is this piston on the right is making a good amount of noise as it's going up and down. The one on the left isn't making any noise. So knowing that, look at them. This one is a little bit loose. This one is not loose. We're gonna take it apart. I'm assuming we're gonna find something on the piston. To take this head off, we're gonna take off these bolts first. Then this should just lift up. And we can take a look at what the top of the piston looks like. You know, I did scope the engine to look at it. The pistons don't look horribly bad. So you can go ahead, take all these off. All right, so we'll take a look at this. See, this side is the one that wasn't firing fully. It's pretty clean. Nothing's really damaged in there. All right, we'll get our first look at the pistons. Oh, look at that movement. So I'll take a look at this one first. Oh, there's some movement. It's not this one. Movement. All right, so we are getting movement in the pistons. This one does feel pretty loose. This one is loose too. The rings. The O-rings around here are all good. So to take off the heads here, or take off the cylinders to get to the pistons, there's essentially bolts here. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these 4 out, and then it should allow us to get these cylinders out and take a look at the sides of the piston. So actually it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 on either side. So I'm gonna mark this side, just pull start. Just so I make sure I get them in the right orientation when they go back together. Bolts are not the same. So that's one thing I'll need to watch out for. Okay. Do bad one first. Good one next. Got some pretty bad news. This right down here, all that play is in the main bearing. This side has no play, so that main bearing down there is absolutely toast. Hoping it didn't take the crank with it. But pistons obviously need to be replaced. The rings, I mean, they don't look that bad. Pistons, yeah. Main bearing, big problem. Yeah, so looking at that there, you can see the movement on that there. So I need to take this apart. I don't know if I need to do just the rod or I'm gonna have to do the bearing. So there we go. So not only do I need to do the top end, but I also need to do the lower as well. I at least got to take this apart, see where the play is, if is there any damage to that or the bearing just wore away. So I guess we're going one level deeper in this, more than I expected. So I actually didn't realize until I was doing a little bit of research a few minutes ago that the rods are actually part of the crankshaft, and you can't buy the crankshaft and rods separately. So I need a new crankshaft. We're still gonna crack it apart. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna take a look in there, but it's gotta get rebuilt somehow. Now, this is kind of where you go to the point of, you know, is it worth it to rebuild the engine? You know, looking at prices of used engines, it's one thing you could do. You don't know if they're gonna have any issues with it. The other side is, you know, where I live, up in New England, snowmobiling is becoming a little bit less and less accessible due to low snow conditions. So I think for this, it makes more sense for me to rebuild this sled and rebuild this engine than to just go for a new sled. I do want a new sled someday, but you know, they're expensive, especially if you're using it 2-3 times a year. So we're gonna get this thing rebuilt. To take this out, I'm gonna use a 14mm. Just gonna slowly hammer it out. All right, so I got both of the pistons out and taking a look through it, you know, I still don't know what the issue that happened was. I'm hoping it was the car boot falling out, but, you know, a little bit concerned that I don't know why that would cause this one to overheat if it did, or maybe this one was just already on its way out. I don't know. Both sides, I gotta check the oil injection pump somehow, so try to figure out a way to see if this is working, making sure that it's getting oil to both sides. I actually think it's one side, just one's injecting it there. But that's at least one of my concerns right now as I'm looking at it. I think I'm gonna pull off some of these lines and try to push air through it to see if I can. But there's still a lot of oil in this, so I gotta drain this out and pull everything apart. So I believe I have everything almost ready to get this apart. So I got to take out all this here. So this needs going. I need that 30mm socket to be able to get that out. And then there might be more within here. I can kind of see some things in there. So I got to take that apart, take a look. Either way, this does need to come out. Most of the bolts, if not all the bolts, are out. The case just isn't coming apart yet. So I'm going to take this part out and then we'll see what's behind that. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna pull off the rest of the pull start. You can see all the thread lock that's in there. So all this blue stuff here is thread lock. So we're gonna have to pull this off now, which means I need to use a puller. I'm using this one, which I will link down in the description. It's from OMT. So we gotta find the right size thread. It's not that one. All right, so I got the puller on in 3 different places. You know, this ring is actually not on there that tight, I'm finding out. So I should be able to just twist it by hand, and it's actually coming off sideways, which is not great. All right, so I've been struggling to get this off. Now, the way that I'm gonna try to do it now is I'm gonna tighten this up a little bit. I'm gonna hit this with some heat, and then I'm gonna hit the end of this with a hammer, hoping that it goes, because you know, I'm not having any luck getting this off. So I've left this outside overnight just so it's ice cold. That way, hopefully the crank is cold enough. I can heat up the flywheel, and then from that I should be able to take it off, but we shall see. So while putting these bolts in, you want to make sure that you don't go so deep that it impacts the stator behind it. So just go as far as you need to get a good pull on it. Broke my tool. All right, so it's been about 3 or 4 weeks, maybe even longer, that I've been working on trying to get this flywheel out. And I have not been successful. No matter what I try, whether it's heat, whether it's slamming it with a 3.5 pound sledgehammer, whatever I do, it's not coming out. So in order to replace this and get my core back, I would need to take the flywheel off it and keep it. So I guess it's kind of having me sit here. This project's been on the bench for 3 or 4 weeks as I've been working on it slowly, thinking about what I'm gonna do with it and what the long-term goal of this snowmobile actually is. Now, I'm not usually someone that gives up on projects like this. You know, I think it is fun to rebuild, but you know, the cost effectiveness of it just isn't there. So I reached out to a few different suppliers, manufacturers that do rebuild cranks, rebuild top ends. You know, to do one, it's gonna cost me $2,000, maybe $2,500. Plus I have that damaged clutch that fell apart when I was taking it apart. So we're talking about $2,500, $33,000 in what's, because of this poor season with not much snow, $1,500 or $2,000 sled that has 14,000 miles on it, which track's getting worn. So the sled is aged. So what I'm gonna end up doing is just getting rid of the sled. It's really not worth any money anymore, especially with the seasons that we've had. There's a ton of sleds that are available for even $1,500 that run, that are rideable. So it's not really worth kind of selling it. It's probably worth just getting rid of it and junking it. You know, there are a few parts that I'll probably keep. I do have the Bikeman Performance Y pipe. You know, who knows, maybe I'll get that on the shelf. I have the nice pistons that are up there as a memento of an engine that was destroyed. But this project, I believe, has come to an end. So I've had this sled for about 8 years now. I believe I paid like $3,500 for it, so I definitely got my money out of it. And it's been a lot of fun, so I'll probably end up getting another one. Just have to decide which one and before next season. I think if I get one, I probably have to get one soon because it's springtime and that's when they're gonna be the lowest price. Thanks for tuning in to Smackey's Garage today. I'll see you next time.